Welcome to the Microsoft IT Pro Podcast, a show about Office 365, Azure, and the IT Pro and end user side of life. Each week, we'll discuss a different topic or recent news related to Office 365 and Azure and how it relates to you as an IT Pro. The Microsoft IT Pro Podcast is never longer than 30 minutes, so let's get started. Scott, here we are, another Friday. Despite you trying to figure out how to actually record your audio without clipping. How you doing?
Oh, I am doing all right. It's been an interesting week. Really fast.
Yes, I agree. Well, I've had a past 3 weeks. Ever since the baby's been born, it's been a whirlwind of everything. Not sleeping some nights, other nights sleeping, and just trying to balance 4 kids. But it's been fun. Last night was not fun. New baby was up from like 2 until 5.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. My wife was up with him most of the time, but I did not sleep great. So I got up at 5 though. Side topic, got a big green egg a couple weeks ago. So I got up at 5 this morning and threw a brisket on.
I have a big green egg too. I should have you come over and help me fix mine.
How'd you break yours?
I didn't break it. It was a freebie from a family member who couldn't use it anymore, but it's just, it just needs some love. So maybe I'll have you come over and tell me how I can spend hundreds of dollars to fix a big green egg.
To repair it? Well, I bought mine used, so I got a really good deal on mine.
Well, mine was free, so...
I didn't get that good a deal.
Yeah. It just needs like the new felt around like the rim and stuff like that to keep all the smoky goodness in.
Yeah, that's the one thing I still need to do on mine too, is mine needs some new felt. So we'll see.
All right.
We'll see how this brisket turns out. It's my first attempt at a brisket, and I've heard that's one of the hardest things to do in a big green egg. So we'll see. There's always Papa John's.
There is always Papa John's.
So in other news, we are going to be at Ignite again this year. We finally got confirmation, starting to get all the details pulled together. So we get to go podcast live from the podcast center again.
Yes, we do. It's going to be a good old grand time, and we're kind of going on towards the end of the week. So hopefully by then, you've formulated some opinions on things and have something to talk about.
Yes, I can almost always come up with an opinion on something. But yeah, we're on Thursday, September 27. So if you're going to be at Ignite, you can come watch us live. We may even have some fun stuff to give away. We're still working on that. We'll at least have stickers. Come get stickers. Maybe we'll have more. But yeah, Thursday, September 27 around lunchtime, that 11:45, 12:45-ish. I should have wrote the time down. 12:30-ish. Yeah. Sometime in there. If you want to stay up to date, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, go sign up for our mailing list. We'll make sure to email out details of where we will be, when we will be there, what time we will be starting. It should also be in the schedule builder here soon. I don't think they have added podcasts to the Ignite schedule builder yet, but they should be, so you can find us in the schedule builder, add us that way. And it looks like it's going to be in a different place. So if you were at Ignite last year, it was kind of like up in that restaurant overlooking the expo hall. This year, it looks like we're going to be in the west hall of the convention center within the immersion zone area. So we'll see how that works, how that turns out. But yeah, mailing list, social media, keep up to date. We'll keep all of you updated on where we'll be, when we'll be, what we'll be talking about, all of that good stuff, and maybe what we'll have to give away to people that want to come watch us live.
Yay! It'll be fun.
Lots of applause. Exactly. And then I'm doing another webinar. So I know like a month ago, I talked about this webinar I did around scripting for Office 365. So I'm switching up the format. That one I did for an hour. I'm doing a half-hour one now about the top 5 things you should know about before getting started with Office 365 if you're just getting going with it. So I'll give that a shot. The link will be in the show notes to go sign up for it. It's actually the same link as the last one because I can change my short links. So it's intg.ink/Office 365 webinar. And I completely forgot what day I scheduled it for. I think I can't remember. It's sometime in September. The date and time and all of that are on the webinar, and I'll talk about it more in upcoming episodes. So that's all my news. Do you have any other news?
I was going to bring something up. So I know we've talked about things like the Cloud Shell in the past, and I was talking to a coworker earlier in the week, and they're like, hey, I'm trying to do this thing in the Cloud Shell. It was nothing crazy. They added Visual Studio Code, or specifically Monaco to the Cloud Shell. So I don't know if you knew that they have kind of like a little like mini VS Code thing sitting in there now.
I've heard about it. I haven't played with it yet.
Yeah. So, the company I work for, we build a lot of labs for students, things like that, and, real-time labs. And we're trying to kind of get through and build some new stuff. And he's like, hey, I'm building this lab. And we've been trying to target a lot of our stuff to the Cloud Shell because it's easier than saying, hey, open VS Code and make sure it has these extensions on your desktop, or go into the PowerShell ISE or do this, or make sure you go install this version of this PowerShell commandlet on this thing, right? It's just kind of easier to always be cloud native and latest and greatest. One of the downsides is when you open the code editor or Monaco in Cloud Shell, fonts can be a little bit weird and things like that. So it's like, hey, how do we increase the font? So, I was just told, hey, go over here to cloudshell.azure.com. And it opens, the Cloud Shell in a fully formed, not part of the Azure portal kind of thing. So you're not constrained by screen size. And then you can just use your web browser to increase the fonts and have fun and things like that. So you gave me extra points for creativity and a couple of points for pointing that thing out. But then I was playing around with it a little bit more, and Monaco does have the command palette, but of course things, like the F1 key binding are kind of horrible and really hard to get to in a browser, but you can absolutely do it. So if you go into the command palette, it does have a zoom in and a zoom out option, which is actually kind of cool. So I learned something new today.
Nifty. Well, thank you. I would have had no idea. So I'm glad you're here to educate me and everybody else.
Yeah. It even has a zoom reset. So you combine like things like code and Cloud Shell with drag and drop file upload and persistent storage with your cloud drive and native Git integration. And the stuff gets interesting really fast. You've got some really cool options there.
So does this mean that I am going to see you next time and you'll be running a Chromebook because all you need now is a browser?
I think we're getting like closer and closer to the point where stuff like that is possible. I actually taught a class a couple of weeks ago where one of my students was on a Chromebook the entire time, and he made it through the entire thing. I was actually very impressed.
Wow. So I haven't ever played with a Chromebook. They actually have an RDP. Like, could you use a VM up in Azure with a Chromebook? I think you can.
Yeah. RDP absolutely. So there's RDP clients. There's all sorts of just neat and nifty stuff going on there. If you haven't played with a Chromebook, go play with one. I was thinking about getting some for the kids, like maybe like one of the more expensive ones so I could play with it too. But they are nifty devices. They're talking about adding native Windows boot to them as well, or giving customers the ability to kind of sideload an OS and potentially dual boot, which could be interesting as well.
Kind of like the Windows. Did you see the Windows 95 announcement the other day?
Yeah, you just download an executable and it gets up and running. There's also somebody that got the old like Windows 2000 kernel stuff just running in a browser, like 100% emulated in a browser, which was kind of crazy. Like you could go on and install executables. I was watching one of like the .NET MVPs play around with trying to install like the earliest versions of .NET like in a web browser thing. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah, it was. Who knows? It's wild. Definitely some of the things that are happening and how much you can actually live in a browser now. Some news. Well, we need to catch up on some news. I'm behind on some of the Office 365 news, and we need to have some catch-up episodes before Ignite because I'm sure we'll have a whole bunch of announcements from Ignite to talk about. But today, we had a listener question. So I will summarize the question. But Steve sent us an email and he said he recently discovered our podcast and have been loving it. I just had to do that because I like giving us pats on the back. But he had a question around Azure Intune device management, which is one aspect of this. But then he was also having trouble kind of wrapping his head around how to get devices that are currently joined to a local domain to become hybrid Azure AD joined, which is one thing you kind of really want to do if you're going to start doing Intune device management is have your devices joined to Azure AD. Whether it's a hybrid Azure AD, there's a few different ways to join it. So he just wanted us to kind of get on, talk about those different options, where to start, how to kind of wrap your head around the whole hybrid Azure AD join scenario. I think I sort of have my head wrapped around it. I won't lie, this, like he said, it can be confusing. There's a lot of different moving pieces there between different methods to join to Azure AD, new features, new functionality that Microsoft is adding to join devices. And then just if you want to start doing stuff with federated and ADFS and all of that. So a whole bunch of different moving parts, a whole bunch of different things to talk about here. So we'll kind of try to summarize this, talk about it a little bit, and hopefully we can help you out a little bit, Steve, at least from the Azure AD join part of it. And we should probably do an episode on Intune and mobile device management too, because both of these topics can be fairly time consuming. There's a lot there.
Beasts in and of themselves, right? They're kind of their own pillars. So why don't we start with talking about how you can get access to these features? So there's always kind of caveats to things, and there's going to be pricing and licensing and entitlement stuff that you need to do to have access to all of this. So one of the easiest ways for most folks to probably get into advanced Intune, hybrid Azure AD join, all that good kind of stuff, all the write back, all the advanced features, because really we're back to talking about Azure AD again. To pin all that stuff in is EM plus S, otherwise known as Enterprise Mobility and Security, or Plus Security, which is do they classify that one as an add-on or its own SKU? I don't even know how they do those anymore. But you can do like an EMS E5, you can do an EMS E3. I think you can just do EMS just on its own somehow. It's
There's
weird.
just the E3 and the E5. There's not an EMS on its own. Apparently they skipped the E1 and they just went with E3, E5, but it is its own SKU now.
Well, you used to be able to buy them, because I remember when I worked for the transportation company, we did just regular Office 365 E3s, and then I had EMS licenses on the side, like EMS E3s. So it wasn't enough to have like an EMS E3. I had to have the Office 365 license too, and then add it on for $10 a month or whatever it was.
So you do still have to have the Office 365 one, but there's goofy add-ons, and then there's like new SKUs, but you still have prerequisites of other SKUs. It's super bizarre. Go back and listen to our licensing episodes. I think we talked about EMS in there a little bit. But yeah, you do have to have like a E1 or Office 365 E1, E3, or E5. And then you can get a additional SKU for EMS E3 or E5. It's like $8 or $9 and then $16. Or if you go back and listen to our Microsoft 365 episode, we talk about licensing Microsoft 365, which includes Office 365, EMS, and then your Windows licensing.
Or you can just go buy Azure AD Premium and kind of sort of get some of the stuff without Intune and MDM and everything else.
Right.
Yeah, it's all clear as mud again. So there's a couple kind of key differences in there. So, and I know we've talked about some of this stuff in the past, but E3 versus E5 at a high level. E5 is going to be, your most inclusive SKU. E3s, you're missing things like risk-based conditional access. You still get conditional access. You just don't get that risk-based conditional access. Hey, when I see this medium signal event, do this. You have no access to PIM or privileged identity management within the E3 SKU, which you do pick up with the E5, and then some of the classification, labeling, and also ATP. So Azure Advanced Threat Protection and things like Cloud App Security are only available in that E5 SKU as well.
Yep, they really are. E3 I found is usually pretty good for most people, but E5 does give you some nice benefits. Like you said, if you're going to do any of the Intune, the mobile device management, so that kind of that second or the first aspect of it, of the Azure Intune device management, you definitely are going to want EMS to do that. However, the first part of it, going back to just Azure AD join, you can do that without EMS. So you can still join your devices to Office 365. They can be joined to your Azure AD directory. You're just not going to have a lot of that management functionality that you gain, that you really are looking to leverage without purchasing those EMS add-ons.
Yes. Yeah. Let's
clarify.
It's all a very loaded thing. It's funny. I just wrote like a little mini book on EMS, and it's so confusing. So, it's like 200 pages of drivel. What is going on here?
And just think, like, we start talking about this licensing and SKUs and what you have, and we have the limited view into the SKUs that are available, because we can see like the public SKUs. I can go into the CSP portal I have and see SKUs. But internally at Microsoft, I think they have like upwards of 250 different SKUs, or it's some ridiculous number of combinations of all these different services that if you have an EA with them or you have some negotiating power to actually buy your licenses right from them, it's just mind-blowing how many possible different combinations of services and licenses there are. But that is getting slightly off topic. Back to the Azure AD join. We'll start with that because, again, you're going to want to do that if you're going to do EMS for most devices, although it's not necessary. So there's kind of three options when you're looking to join a device to Azure AD.
Well, there's join and there's device registration.
Right. And then there's the whole hybrid one.
Yeah.
If you're on-prem. So Azure AD join is going to be more of that cloud-only based scenario. You don't have an on-prem AD server. You want to join your Windows 10 device to Azure AD. This joins it right in. And the Azure AD join is a bit more focused on devices you own. So you have all your corporate Windows 10 devices, your mobile phones, and you want to actually join them to a domain, but you don't have an on-prem domain controller. That's going to be the Azure AD join. Hybrid Azure AD join is that scenario where you have an on-prem AD server, or you have a federated ADFS server, you have some other identity provider, and you also want your devices to be joined to Azure AD. And then the final one is that Azure AD registration, which Microsoft classifies this as more of that BYOD scenario. You're bringing your own device. You kind of want it registered with your Azure AD so you can still do some of the management on it. You can still do some of the mobile device management, some of the application management, but you're not doing like a full join to that corporate domain. So there's a table out there when some of this first came out. It's actually a blog article from Microsoft that gives some nice tables of the differences between the Azure AD join and the device registration. And then you also have that whole, I'm going to actually do both of them, where I'm going to do a domain join and a device registration. So it really breaks down all those different features in what scenarios and then what features get provided with an Azure AD join versus a device registration. Again, that hybrid Azure AD join, it's very similar to the Azure AD join. It's just how your infrastructure is set up. On-prem AD server versus just cloud-only accounts.
Yeah, so to summarize it, it's pretty much Azure AD registered for personal devices or BYOD, or when you want to do manual registrations. Azure AD joined is for corporate devices that are not joined to an on-premises AD, and hybrid AD is for corporate-owned devices that are joined to an on-premises AD and kind of linked in and ready to go. You know, that's kind of the easiest way to approach them, I think.
Yeah, it is. And again, it can get confusing. Mover is a cloud migration company that specializes in moving your company's files from file servers or cloud storage like Box, Dropbox, and Google into Office 365. Their patented technology makes Mover the fastest OneDrive file migrator in the world. Moving dozens of terabytes of data a day is a breeze. Use Mover's free, industry-leading migration guides, or ask for a managed migration and they'll take the lead. With Mover, all your data is secure and intact. Running completely behind the scenes, you don't lose time, money, or hair while you transfer. Scan, plan, migrate, report. Migrations that don't suck with Mover. Visit mover.io for more info. So, different ways to get these in here. So this was kind of the gist of Steve's question was, okay, I have this. I want to get my hybrid or my devices hybrid Azure AD joined. We'll get to that. First, just to start with that normal Azure AD join. There's a few different ways you can do this. Microsoft is introducing a Windows Autopilot program. So this is auto-joining devices to your Azure AD environment, auto-enroll them in MDM, which does require that Azure AD Premium. So again, now, just like that, you're going to need to get one of those EMS licenses. This is this Windows Autopilot. Essentially, it's a way to take a hardware ID from the devices. So Dell, HP, any of those Windows laptops, even Mac laptops, have a very unique hardware ID. And Microsoft is providing a way, one, where you can either buy these devices, and I don't know at what phase they are with all of these, and even where the OEMs are in it, but you can buy them right from the companies with your corporate account, and they will already be registered. Employees turn them on, and they're just joined to Azure AD right away. They pick up that hardware ID as soon as they connect, they turn on, register them. Everything is automatically enrolled, set up, joined, etc. Obviously, this requires a little bit more planning on the front end because you're not just going to go to Best Buy and buy a laptop and have it auto-joined. But that's one option. Again, lots of information here. We'll provide a link to that. But then you also have bulk deployments where you can get all your Azure AD, or you can get your hardware IDs, load them up into Azure AD, and kind of do a little bit more of that from a manual standpoint around that bulk deployment of that Windows Autopilot. And then you do have, or the Azure AD join, sorry, not the Autopilot, bulk deployment for Windows devices. And there's steps, tutorials walking you through this whole bulk enrollment process.
Yeah, you'll be in the Windows Configuration Designer. Ooh, it's a real pretty program if nobody's ever seen it. It was definitely designed by a developer. And then the last one is just the self-service. So when you first turn a computer on, it gets asked to, if you want to log in to join your corporate Azure AD environment, or you can go into the control panel and you can just join a device to Azure AD that way. So again, these are all going to be devices that aren't joined to an on-prem Active Directory. These are going to be ones that you're running a cloud-only environment. You just want to join them to Azure AD without having that on-premises Active Directory environment. I see this a lot more. So think remote workers where you don't really have a central office. You don't have central servers. You're doing Office 365. You're just ordering and shipping laptops straight to your employees in whatever city, country, location they may be. That's where some of this autopilot comes on, or where some of the Azure AD join comes into play, is you ship them a laptop, you join them to your corporate Azure AD to manage their devices, do all of that. So that is that in a nutshell. The hybrid Azure AD join, even for me, this is the one that gets a little bit more confusing. Certain scenarios are either easier than others. So one scenario is you just have your managed domain, typical on-prem Azure or AD environment, and you can go in there and just set up Azure AD Connect. So certain versions, I think it's version 1.1.819, actually has a bunch of the configuration in there where you go, you set up your Azure AD Connect, and within there, you can go configure the whole hybrid Azure AD join. The gist of all of this is when you get to device options in the Azure Active Directory Connect, you can choose your configure hybrid Azure AD join. You can go set up your connection endpoints for your Azure AD tenant. So think your domain.onmicrosoft.com. And it'll walk you through it. And all you really have to do to get this working is make sure that the OU on your on-prem AD is actually syncing all your devices and your objects up to Azure AD. There's not a whole lot to it. You don't have to worry about ADFS if you don't want to. It's literally just making sure those devices get synced into Azure AD. They're joined to your local on-premises directory, and they become hybrid Azure AD joined. Just like that. Yeah, you will have a decision to make, and you'll have to know what types of devices are in your environment, which hopefully you do, right? If you're a kind of corporate organizational environment, for what OS people are running and what's going to be joining in, because you do have a little bit of an inflection point. Do we want to do just Windows 10 devices, or do we want to do Windows 10 and down-level devices? Because down-level devices have some other things that go on with them, right? You can't necessarily do everything you could do with Windows 10. So you've got to go and enable that and actually turn on the features so that some of those older Windows 8.1 things can kind of be joined into that hybrid Azure AD domain. So there's a couple other steps in there, so if people are like going through tutorials or things like that, and, like you're a Windows 7 shop still, and you go to join all your stuff, and it's like, it doesn't work. Oh, it's because you probably didn't turn it on.
Yep. Yeah. And that is a good point, is make sure you know what devices you have. Again, if you have Macs too, Macs are slightly different because it's not as straightforward. You don't just go in and join them to your Active Directory domain. There's a whole nother set of intricacies that you get into if you're using Macs. So, like you said, be aware of those clients, what clients you're using, and some of those specific requirements for older versions of Windows.
Yeah. So for hybrid AD enrollment, like you said, you've got managed domains. There's different configuration for federated domains. There's a different configuration if you just want to do manual device join for those hybrid devices. So say you have a bunch of existing devices and kind of you're looking at going down that path. Or if you're doing a net new deployment, you can also do that Windows 10 first run experience for hybrid Azure AD device join.
Yeah. And we'll put links to all of these in the show notes. So again, for your question, Steve, I know you had talked about ADFS. If you guys don't have ADFS or you're not using it, it's not one of those where you necessarily have to go out and install ADFS to do hybrid Azure AD joined. It's not a requirement to do it. If you do have ADFS and you're using it, like you said, Scott, there are some other steps to go through. Certain URLs have to be accessible for all of these. So some registration URLs, you have to make sure your DNS is updated. But then if you're doing ADFS, you have to also make sure your organization's STS for that federated domain is available, and go through some of those additional configuration steps that involve some PowerShell to set up various computer syncs, connectors, endpoints, all of that. And all of this is pretty well documented out on their website. Again, to try to go through this PowerShell and explain it all in a audio podcast is not going to be conducive to anybody unless you're trying to go to sleep.
Oh, I could use a nap. I think it's like you said, it's all very well documented. The part that's difficult to kind of grok or put together with the documentation is understanding where to start. So the best place that you can probably start and that I would typically target into is what are the body of devices and what's the specific scenario you're targeting. So if you can come in and say, hey, we have federation today. Let's forget about if it's ADFS or whatever. It doesn't matter. We federate Azure AD today. All right, cool. All right, so we know you're kind of compliant, ready to go there. What kind of devices do you have? Well, we don't really know. I think some people are running Windows 7. Some people are running 8.1. Some people are running 10. That's no good. You got to come back and be able to tell me they're running Windows 7 with these patches, or they're up to this service pack or this patch level. If you're on Windows 10, it gets really, really weird really quickly because there's so many kind of versions between fall updates and creator updates and all the other things. So it gets kind of into the weeds really quickly where you'll say, hey, I am doing federation and I'm doing Windows 10. Okay, cool. Is that Windows 10 1709? Is it 1803? Because if it's 1709, you're going to have to enable some additional features. Are you going through an outbound proxy? What's that look like? So really, you've got to do all the discovery and understand the body of what's going on there. Once you've done that part, it's not horrible to get it up and running. Now, once it's up and running, that's another story because it only does what it does and it only is what it is once it is up and running.
Yep. And another one of those too is make sure, even before you do all of this, is whatever scenario you're going to end up with, if you have an on-prem AD server, you are going to have to get Azure AD Connect up and running, get all your users, your devices synced. That's a requirement for everything. So if you do have both environments too, I would hope that people have already done this, that it was, again, one of those first 5 things you did, or the very first thing you did when you got your Office 365 tenant was get Azure AD Connect up and running and set up to sync users and devices up there. And also make sure you're on version at least 1.1.819.0 if you're setting this up, because there were a bunch of improvements there around the whole hybrid Azure AD environment to just give you some wizards, make it a lot easier to get set up and configured.
Yeah, I would just say make sure you're on the latest version of AD Connect. If you're not, go ahead and get upgraded, and then go ahead and think about, if it meets your scenario and your needs, enabling the auto update functionality. That's a part of that tooling. So it'll just update monthly on its own. And then you don't necessarily need to worry about being 6 months behind or whatever it is, because you haven't made that part of your regular hygiene or regular schedule to keep that tooling up to date.
Yep. And I think with the newer versions, I think auto update's enabled by default now on all the later versions.
It is. They seem to break that every couple months. Sometimes they release an installer where it just doesn't install the right way. So it does move at a weird pace, but it's okay. I would generally encourage folks to take a look at turning that one on. Yeah, it's got its foibles like anything else, but you know what? It's one less thing to worry about.
Yep. And once you get all this up and running, it doesn't mean that it's going to work for all your users too. I know you've had this experience. You've talked to people, Scott. I've had clients that have had the same thing where every once in a while, they've just got a device that will not join to hybrid Azure AD. It looks to be configured the same as everything else. Everything appears to be fine, the same settings, join to the same domains, the same OUs, and it just doesn't want to join to Azure AD. Open a ticket with Microsoft. I got nothing there, except to give you that preface that it's just like all technology. It can have its issues. It doesn't always work. Don't freak out if you get a device or two that it just doesn't work on. It may take a little while working through the Office 365 support, but they are getting better. And they are there to help you if you do run into kind of those one-off scenarios where a device is just having issues. There's some PowerShell commands, some processes they do have that can help you work to get those one-off devices joined to hybrid Azure AD.
Yep. So there's kind of the one-off thing. The other thing I should probably mention is the way we kind of talked about enrollment. We approached it as a binary decision, it's either on or it's off. And that's not necessarily the case. You do have some control over which clients do automatically join a domain. So if you go ahead and configure, hybrid device join, and say you've done auto enrollment for federated domains, you can control that with a GPO, which devices will actually go ahead and join the domain. So what you can do is roll out this GPO ahead of time and then go configure Azure AD and then slow roll devices in so that you can test this out and see how it goes. That can be super helpful too when you are targeting not just client devices. So hybrid AD join does work for server OSs as well. And there are certain situations where you may or may not want to use that. But if you do, that's definitely a slow roll kind of thing to get those in there and see how they come in. So you can control all that with GPO.
All right. Sounds good. Well, I think that does a high-level overview. I hope that helps, Steve. Hopefully that answers your questions, and hopefully that helps anybody else that's looking to implement Office 365 and use that hybrid Azure AD join, the MDM. Again, we'll have to do a whole nother episode and dive into MDM and Intune and all of that, and actually managing those devices once you get them joined to Azure AD.
Yeah.
So for now,
let's
go check my brisket.
Excellent.
All right.
Have fun.
Thanks. We'll talk to you later, Scott. If you enjoyed the podcast, go leave us a 5-star rating in iTunes. It helps to get the word out so more IT pros can learn about Office 365 and Azure. If you have any questions you want us to address on the show or feedback about the show, feel free to reach out via our website, Twitter, or Facebook. Thanks again for listening and have a great day.